The votes are going to come from some of the places that the rest of Texas least expects it.
Amen.
Some people try to tell us that this county is red, or that it's Republican, or that it will never be for us. I don't know if it's red, it may not be blue. What it is more than anything else is non-voting. In the 2020 election, in this very county, 58,000 people who were eligible to do so did not vote in the most consequential presidential election of our lifetimes. 58,000. Since 2020, get this, 20,000 new voters have entered the rolls. These are young people who just turned 18, 19 years old. These are new U.S. citizens who just naturalized right here in this area. You add those 58,000 and those 20,000 together, 80,000 voices that we have yet to hear from, 80,000 votes that have yet to be counted. In that contest against Ted Cruz in 2018, we only lost by 216,000 votes. The ability to turn people out in this community is our ability to win this election. But in order to do it, I'm going to need you. We are going to need each other, right? We both need some good news. We both need some hope at this moment. I hope that we both agree that hope is not a passive activity. It's not sitting on the couch hoping that somebody's going to ride to the rescue or save our bacon at the end of the day. Hope is taking a clipboard, knocking on your neighbor's door, asking them to come into this election for every reason that brought you out here today. That person who opens their door, one of those 80,000 who has not voted in a previous election, not because they're lazy, not for any lack of love for this democracy, but because this state makes it so damn hard for so many to cast that ballot or to register to vote. These election laws that have closed down more than 700 polling places in the fastest growing state, that's twice the number of the next closest state. Predictably, they've been closed down in the fastest growing black and brown neighborhoods. When on election day we see people 6 hours deep outside the polling station at Texas Southern University, it's 6 hours deep because they've closed all the polling stations around there. They know that it's a primarily black African American neighborhood, and they know that some people don't have 6 hours to wait in line. They're working not one but two minimum wage jobs that pay $7.25 an hour. They're taking care of their parents. They're taking care of their kids. They just don't want to go through the indignity of waiting 6 hours in order to vote. We've got a gerrymander of this state where those in power pick their voters instead of the other way around, and where people have been drawn out of a congressional district or state representative district solely based on the color of their skin or their country of national origin. No, these people who have not voted love our democracy. They love this country. They love this state. They want to be part of the solution. But when asked why they did not vote, in addition to the obstacles that have been placed in their way, they say that no one ever asked them to vote. You volunteer with us by signing up with somebody who's in a yellow vest here today. If you're in a yellow vest, raise your hand, pull those clipboards up high. I see 2 or 3 people here. Hopefully we'll get more. But we want to make sure that you sign up with one of those volunteers. It is the only way to bring out, to turn out, to win with those who have not been heard from before. Now, do you think we would have a total ban on abortion with no exception for rape or incest if everyone in Texas was turning out to vote? No. Do you think we would be attacking school teachers in the way that we do today, underpaying them so badly they work not one but 2, sometimes 3 jobs to make ends meet? Or we're asking them to turn in the parents of transgender kids for child abuse, to turn those kiddos over to CPS? Those are not Texas values. Those are not the values of those who are home right now who have not participated in our elections. If it's 80,000 in Brazoria County, statewide it is 7 million people that we have yet to hear from. I guarantee you, when those who've been the targets of suppression and intimidation are contacted by you, because you show up at their door face to face, eyeball to eyeball, human to human, They will turn out, they will vote, and they will be the margin of victory on the night of November 8th. You all with me? You ready to do this? Let's make sure that we do. Let's make sure that we do. When does school start in this ISD? 17th. On the 17th of this month. So, in the El Paso Independent School District, where we have a kiddo who's just started his sophomore year, another her freshman year, another his 6th grade year. We started the year on Monday. And as I was just saying, those kids are going into classrooms where teachers are doing the most important job under the most difficult circumstances in the most trying time that I can imagine. Because not only are they underpaid, they look at the retired teachers who preceded them and see a cost of living adjustment that was last made in the year of our Lord, 2004. 18 years as prices have gone through the roof for everything that you need to survive, and yet your income from the state of Texas, after you devoted the best years of your life to these kids, has changed not a cent. You're telling me that after 2 years of pandemic, 2 years of learning loss, 2 years where so many of these kids have suffered trauma, like losing the lives of their grandparents. No, nearly 100,000 Texans lost their lives in this pandemic. Those are the grandparents and parents of so many of these kids. There was a recession for many, and those children may have lost their home and the reliable place that they could lay their head down at night. We have one of the most food insecure populations of young people anywhere in the United States of America. They're on free and reduced breakfast and lunch, but is there a warm meal waiting for them at the end of the day for dinner or on the weekends? What you've told me, I just want to make sure that you know that I am listening to you, is that we've got to focus on keeping those kids alive, making sure that they're okay, stoking their curiosity and their lifelong love of learning. What we don't need is more bureaucracy or hoops to jump through. What we don't need is more high-stakes, high-pressure testing. That's why we're going to cancel the STAR test in the state of Texas. Replace it with something that actually works. More of a diagnostic. It's not there to punish teachers, schools, principals, and districts, but to help the kids that they serve in the first place. And the person who's going to help me do that is our next TEA commissioner, who will be a classroom teacher. She will know what it's like to deliver for those kids. We're going to do better for those educators. And it's the classroom teacher, it's the counselor, it's the librarian who, could we have imagined this even a couple of years ago, that into her library would come an official with a hand truck carting off books that are deemed too dangerous for our kids to read in what is supposed to be the world's greatest democracy. Who are we if we are afraid of one another, ideas, and words on a page in this state? To the school bus driver, the cafeteria worker, to the support personnel, I just want you to know that we are going to have your back at a time that thousands of you are leaving the profession. My 11-year-old who completed 5th grade in June didn't have a permanent classroom teacher the entire year. The official estimate is half of all Texas teachers leave the profession in the first 5 years. I'm sure after these last 2 years, it is much greater. We're going to fight for you. We're going to pay you enough so you only work that one job instead of 2 or 3. We're going to increase that cost of living adjustment every year for those retired teachers. And listen, you cannot quantify this, you cannot measure it, but you got to look into my eyes as I say this. We're going to treat you with the respect and dignity that you deserve, that you earned, and that each of us as Texans owe you. Can we get on the same page on that? Let's get behind Texas educators now. For those of you in this community who have family members or you yourselves struggle to be able to see a healthcare provider, if you know that we are 51st in mental health care access because you have untreated schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or clinical depression, and because you don't have Medicaid or insurance or the ability to see a doctor, you self-medicate or you just grin and bear it, or you suffer in ways that you're unable to tell others. You're unable to live to your full potential, be healthy enough and well enough to raise that family, to go to work, to start a small business and hire others, finish your education. Whatever you were placed on this planet to do in the first place, you want to, but you can't because you don't have that connection to care. I just want to tell you There is a solution to this, and it comes from Texas. It comes from Texas in terms of our resources. There's $10 billion right now sitting on a table in Washington, D.C. of our federal income taxes paid from this state that they want to send back to us if we'll just take yes for an answer to expand Medicaid. The very idea of Medicaid, first signed into law by LBJ in the summer of 1965. We literally came up with this stuff. It wasn't a pipe dream from some other part of the country. It wasn't imposed upon us by some other nation on the planet. It was the people in Texas who wanted to make sure that fortune or fate or luck did not determine your circumstances, your options, or your opportunities over the course of your life. Folks, more kids die of diabetes in this state than in any other. 102, 103 years after penicillin was developed, at a time that it costs pretty close to nothing to produce. The fact that we have fellow Texans, including kids who do not have a vote in this next election and are counting on us, that we are needlessly losing their lives right now. I mean, that's on your conscience, it is on mine, it's on all of us until we change it. That's why when we win, we are going to expand Medicaid in the state of Texas. We're going to get with the program, do what every other border state, Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, 3 of those 4 with Republican governors have already done. And here's the kicker. This is, I don't know if you all, those of you who are my generation, 49, 50 years old, over the summer break, you're watching a lot of cable TV, you see the Ginsu knives commercial, and if you buy this set of knives now, you get this additional paring knife. The bonus in Medicaid expansion for us is that in addition to connecting people with care, in addition to saving lives, which for me is the most important, you have me there, I don't need anything else. But for those who cannot connect through our power of empathy that we uniquely have in the animal kingdom, with the suffering of others at a time that we could actually help to make them better by connecting these amazing nurses and medical providers with the folks whose lives need to be made better and to save. If you say, you know what, I'm fine, Beto, I've got insurance, I lucked out in life, not my problem, pull yourself up by your bootstraps if you're having a hard time. If that's how you see the world, let me speak to your self-interest. If we take that $10 billion, which is ours, by the way, not a handout, not a freebie, not a giveaway from the federal government, our tax dollars coming back into our state. Not only do we connect all these people with care, we will also lower your property taxes. Because right now, I hear somebody who likes lowering their property taxes. Right now, when that untreated diabetic, that untreated schizophrenic, that person who's struggling with a lack of access to health care, when their suffering finally becomes too much, it is not as though they completely forego medical attention. They just wait until they have no other choice but to drag themselves or be dragged by a family member to the ER. And because they have not received medical care or preventative attention or any medication whatsoever, the complications from their conditions are so much worse. The outcomes are going to be so much worse, and the care is going to be exponentially more expensive. Now, even though this person does not have a dime to their name, has no insurance to pay the bill, it doesn't disappear. It just gets spread out amongst all of us. Higher premiums and deductibles for those of us lucky enough to have insurance, and for any property taxpayer in the room. And that's all of us. Even if you own your own home or you rent, it gets passed through to you. We pay that in higher taxes to our county because that uncompensated care gets distributed through all of us. So taking the $10 billion also reduces the pressure on our property taxes, and we can bring that down as well. At a time of rising inflation, where your utility bills have gone up $45 a month on average per ratepayer because the genius in the governor's office could not keep the lights on or the heat on or the water everywhere in the energy capital of the world, and he decided to pass all the costs on to you. The $20 billion that your property taxes have increased since he took office 7 years ago, that's a 40% increase. Remember the stunt where he shut down all U.S.-Mexico trade for more than a week? 2/3 of what we buy in the grocery store for fresh produce comes over from Mexico. It all rotted to nothing on those bridges, and your cost to buy groceries also went through the roof as well. Greg Abbott, single greatest driver of inflation in Texas. We need to replace him with somebody who's going to bring down our property taxes, who's going to bring down our utility bills, who's going to bring down our cost of living in the state of Texas, so you have the resources to get ahead. That's what we can do when we come together to win this election. You know, in Abbott's Texas, and Nicole was kind of touching on this, it's you or me, right? He's all about who you are supposed to be afraid of, who you're supposed to hate, who we are supposed to cast out. And he very often does it to distract us and to keep us from doing the great things that we're truly capable of, or keep us from holding him accountable for the failures during his administration. You know, were he here, and I don't know, I mean, you tell me, I don't know how many town halls like this he holds in Brazoria County, anyone can come in and he takes a question. But were he here, and you were to say, Mr. Governor, you know, it's closing in on a year and a half since the grid failed. My utility bills have gone up. You haven't reached out to a single one of the 700 families who lost somebody, people who froze to death, died of carbon monoxide poisoning, burned up in their homes as they lit fires to try to stay alive, literally. And you still have not fixed the grid to prevent this from happening next winter. What are you going to do? And if you were to ask them, you'd either be asked to leave by him, or he'd say, hold on a second, look at those Mexicans at the border. They're coming to get us right now. Be very afraid. This is the guy who talks about invasions. This is the guy who talks about Texans. Literally, this is a direct quote. Take matters into your own hands when it comes to those who are coming into this country. We must defend ourselves. These are military terms, not lost on those who see this as a military problem to be solved with violence. And then at a minimum, it keeps us from doing the big things that we ought to do. If it is Child Protective Services, where 6 years ago a federal judge said, Mr. Governor, kids emerged from CPS care more damaged than when they went in. And that is no reflection, by the way, on the CPS caseworkers who are doing their mighty best under really difficult circumstances with no pay increases as state employees, and they're leaving that profession in great numbers. But that was the warning 6 years ago. In January of this year, the same federal judge says, Mr. Governor, that situation I described to you back then, it has gone from bad to worse. There are kids who tonight in CPS offices will be sleeping in the hallways there, under the tables, atop the desks. More than 100 kids have lost their lives in CPS custody and care just since the year 2020. Hundreds of them have been trafficked and sexually abused. I know this is hard for us to hear about and to listen to and to confront, but if we fail to do that, we are never going to make it better. But you know what he does? When we say that to him and ask him how he's going to make it better, he tries to distract us again. Do you think he cares one way or the other about transgender kids and their parents? I would say probably not. But he knows that this will grab some headlines. This will boil some water. This will stoke some anxiety and fear, and he can distract us from a real challenge. And what is so perverse and downright dangerous and deadly about this is that accusation of child abuse against the parents of transgender kids, if sustained, means that that transgender child, as well as every other kid in the household, is taken from those loving parents and turned over to that foster care system that is the worst run in the nation. If he's all about it's you or me, who are you going to be afraid of? Who are you going to hate? We have to be about it is you and me. It is all of us together in this great state doing everything we can for, by, and with one another. It's making sure that no one feels attacked. No one has to be feared because of who they are. That means if you're a woman, you make your own decisions about your own body and your own future and your own health. You shouldn't have to fear living in Texas simply based on your gender or the fact that you are of quote-unquote childbearing age. If you're gay, I don't want you to fear a Don't Say Gay bill that's being proposed in the next legislative session. I don't want you to be fired based on your sexual orientation. I don't want you to be denied the ability to adopt somebody just because you're in a same-sex household. In our Texas, no one will be discriminated against based on any difference between us, your race, your ethnicity, your gender, your sexual orientation. No me importa. All of us, before we're anything, we're Americans, we're Texans, we're human beings, and we're going to start treating one another that way.
All right.
Y'all with me on that? Last thing that I want to say. For so many who are struggling right now, where there are more Texans working underneath a living wage, meaning they got to work that second job, or take that third shift, or rely on public assistance to get by in a state where the minimum is still $7.25. And some of you may say, hey, I don't work for $7.25. I don't know anybody in my life who works $7.25. I'm meeting the people who work $7.25 around this state. I'm meeting the airport workers who are hauling that luggage and breaking their backs on behalf of all of us. The folks who work at the slaughterhouse preparing the meat that we will consume tonight at our meals. The people out in the fields who sometimes, because they are undocumented, don't even make $7.25. They have no recourse to go to the courts and have any kind of economic justice at all. I want to make sure that in this state, if you work hard, you will get ahead. You don't need to work that second or third job to get by. I want to make sure that the floor below which we don't pay anybody anything less is $15 an hour. I want to make sure that's enforced. I want to make sure that you have every opportunity to organize, to join a union, to use the leverage of what you produce in the workplace to get better wages, to get better health care, to get better protection for yourself and for the public at large. I want to make sure that every challenge that we face is met by the innovation and the ingenuity of the everyday Texan. On climate, you all know this better than most communities in this country. We are the energy capital of the world. We're the oil and gas leader of the planet right now. And we're proud of that. And we're so grateful for those who secured the energy independence of this country. I'm old enough to remember when we were going to war half a world away to secure our energy lines for this country. I love that Texas has freed us from that dependence and go into any more wars, at least for that reason, going forward. But I also want to make sure that we own the future. Some country, some part of some country is going to take the lead. I want it to be the United States, and I want it to be Texas. So when I listen to the electricians and the plumbers and the steelworkers and the carpenters and the longshoremen and longshorewomen right here in this community, they together have come up with a climate jobs plan. It will create more than 1 million high-paying, high-value, high-skilled jobs in communities just like these to ensure that we own the future of energy, be that hydrogen, be it wind, be it solar, be it geothermal, be it battery storage, be it making sure that these buildings are more energy efficient so they draw down less electricity from the grid and the candidate in the room is not sweating through his shirt down to the sun. We're going to make sure that those are union jobs that afford protection for the people who are working on it. You don't have more people working underneath the living wage when you have the right to organize in a given state. And listen, we don't begrudge those who own the companies, the CEOs, the shareholders. We want them to do well. We just want everyone to be able to do well in Texas. And when everyone's doing better, everyone is going to be doing better. You all with me on this? So listen. And we invite the Abbott folks to come in as well, too, to hear this message. If you get asked afterwards by someone who couldn't take this hour off from work or school or family or life to be here, I know you went out to see Beto in Lake Jackson. What did the guy have to say? You can say, look, he wants to improve public education by getting the backs of our teachers. He wants to create more high-paying jobs in communities like this one. He wants to expand Medicaid, a bipartisan idea that's going to connect more people with care and lower property taxes. He trusts women to make their own decisions. He wants to make sure that you can be who you are and marry the person that you love. He just wants to stand up for our rights and who we are at our best. You tell them that's what you want as well. If we do that, talk to the people in our lives, sign up with these amazing people in the bright yellow vest to take on shifts, to knock on doors. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be celebrating like no other time in our lives on the night of November 8th. An historic victory for the people of Texas. Thank you all for coming out. Looking forward to answering your questions, hearing what's on your mind. Gracias. I love that energy. Really good. Thank you all. Thank you. Te agradezco. Señorita Carita. Miss Cano has a microphone. She will bring that to you. If you have a question, a comment, just raise your hand and she'll try to get as many voices into the conversation as possible.
Great. I'm going to ask if you could just keep it to one question so we can get to as many as we can. Hold on, sir.
We got you. We see the man in blue, and we're going to take him a microphone right after this.
I'm so happy you're here today, and I'm so happy to see all of these people. Thank you for coming to Brazoria County. And I have my 10-year-old granddaughter with me, and I would love for her to have a picture with you. She is so excited about what you've been saying. She is 10 years old, and she's been just listening.
So, ladies and gentlemen, 10 years old, Abigail is here. Abigail, you and the other young people who are here, you're who we're doing this for right now, right? We're going to make sure that we come through for you, that we're not found wanting. Bring it, Abigail. Miss Collins, the gentleman in the back,
yes.
we want to get you.
I'm going to get to her, and I will be right there to you, sir.
Wonderful.
There you go. I'm going to squeeze in. We're all going to get nice and comfy. Here you go.
I feel like so many times politicians lie to us. I want your handshake, or are you really going to make a change if you make it? Yes,
I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so glad that you asked that question. Couple of things, because you're right, you just can't take my word for it. You got to look at my actions over time. It's the best predictor of future performance, right? So when I was running for Congress, I try to keep it real simple, as I did it today, about what it is I hope to do for my community back in El Paso in the House of Representatives. First, among all my priorities, was delivering for the women and men who put their lives on the line for this country in uniform. We have the worst performing VA in the nation for mental health care access. We were 148th out of 148 VA systems. People were waiting not days, not weeks, not months. They were waiting more than a year to get in to see a provider for their post-traumatic stress disorder, their traumatic brain injury. So, even though I was a Democrat in a Republican majority institution, I used my position on the House Veterans Affairs Committee to turn that local VA around, and we did. But to not stop there, because I realized there were veterans in other parts of Texas and this country who were similarly struggling. I wrote a bill. I thought it was a great one that expanded mental health care access, but I couldn't get it passed if I couldn't find a Republican partner. So I had a choice. Do I stand on principle? Do I come back to a meeting like this? Do I face my constituents and the veterans I represented in El Paso and say, you know what? I wrote a great bill, but these jokers on the other side just don't care about you. Keep re-electing me. I'll get back there someday. I'll have a majority, and then we'll get it done. I knew you would laugh me out of the room if I said something that ridiculous. So I got to a consensus position on that bill. I didn't get my version of perfect, but I got something I could get done. That Republican colleague probably felt the same way about his contributions to it. We made our case to all 435 members of the House. Is it going to cost more to extend this care? Absolutely. But should we pay any price for those veterans who are willing to lose their lives for us in this country? Should there be a consequence for those who had a status of discharge other than honorable? There certainly should, but it shouldn't be their lives, because they were taking their lives at twice the rate of the general veterans population. We got that bill passed 435 to 0. We got it signed into law by the one person on this planet with whom I agree on almost nothing, Donald J. Trump. And it's right now helping to save the lives of those who are willing to lose their lives for us. That's just one example. But the things I'm committing to today, expanding Medicaid, there's a broad bipartisan consensus, Republicans and Democrats, who want to get that done. It's going to help our big communities. It will help our Republican-represented rural counties even more, where 16 hospitals have closed down in rural Texas on Greg Abbott's watch, primarily because we don't have Medicaid expansion. You name an issue we talked about today, it's going to be hard for us to find a Republican who will argue the other side. Paying teachers more, having better quality schools, improving the kinds of jobs that we have here in Texas. This is what we're going to get done. But the best way to hold me accountable is to have me back in this room after we win, and for you to ask me the question, say, Beto, what have you done on the things that you committed to? I held a town hall meeting every single month that I was in Congress. I feared my constituents because I knew that I would have to answer them. I knew that those are the folks to whom I must deliver, and that you were going to hold me accountable. So you have my handshake agreement. And all of you, thank you for being here. Grateful to you.
What are you going to do about the Texas School Board? Most of the members of the Texas School Board, they're not teachers. They're people that don't know Jack. My wife retired for 32 years. I'm here with another teacher. Those people that are up there in the Texas State Board, they don't have any education. They're just executives and trying to tell the teachers what to do.
I love this question because it describes how we got to where we are right now. When you have a TEA commissioner who's not a classroom teacher, when you have members of the State Board of Education who do not have the experience in our public schools, when you try to think about who the STAR test is benefiting, is it the kid? Because it's not really measuring her potential or really even her performance. Is it the teacher? No, because it's not really doing much to share with us her effort or the challenges that she faces in the classroom. It does really well for the corporation who makes the STAR test and profits off of its being purchased. We're one of the last states that requires something like the STAR test for graduation from our public high schools. Almost no other part of the country does that. The otherwise inexplicable is explained when we start to follow the money. So to the gentleman's point, not only must we appoint a classroom teacher as the next TEA commissioner, these State Board of Education elections taking place all over this state, including right here in this community, are critically important. Our local school board elections that set the rate that teachers are going to be paid, help determine the quality of life for those educators and for the kids and parents in that district, and the tax rate, which is so damn important. Those are critical as well. And then all of us holding our state representatives accountable, because I mentioned, we want to pay teachers more, right? But I don't want that to come through your property tax bill. So you ask me, how are you going to pull that off? Right now, the state of Texas spends 40% on the cost of public education. You and I, as property taxpayers, we pay 60%. It used to be, in the good old days, a 50-50 split. We're going to get back to that. The great news is the person who has proposed that 50-50 split is not a Democrat. It's a Republican legislator from North Texas. We're going to have a bipartisan support to do just what this gentleman's asking us to do. Thank you for being here and for the question. Gotcha.
Hi, Mr. O'Rourke. My name is Tamara. I work for the state of Texas in Medicaid for the elderly and people with disabilities. And as a clerk, I deal with a lot of people that come in every day. They're sent to us by Social Security because they weren't eligible for Medicare. So they come to us because Social Security says, go to Medicaid, they can get you on something. And it kills me every single day to have to tell these people, we don't have a program like that. We don't have a Medicaid like that. So hearing you say that you're going to expand Medicaid, that's going to make my job a lot easier. Because a lot of people need access to care that is not being given to them by the federal government. And they come from other states and they're like, well, we have Medicaid in that state. And I have to say, sorry, we don't have that in Texas. So thank you for saying that that's on your agenda. And as a family member of gay and lesbian, I love your stance on that. I just want to ask real quick, what is your stance on marijuana legalization?
We win this election, we're going to legalize marijuana. And I want to make sure that you hear this part as well, because it's important. Given the fact that that Texans of all backgrounds, all races, ethnicities, any difference between us, use marijuana at roughly the same rate. And yet it is overwhelmingly black and brown Texans who get stopped, who get frisked, who are incarcerated, who after release from jail are forced to check a box on every employment application form saying that they have that conviction. Every single student loan application form saying that they have that conviction. Their options in life are constrained, their choices are narrowed. What they can do for themselves and for all of us is so limited. For what? For possession of a substance that is legal in most of the states of this country. So in addition to legalizing, let's expunge the arrest records of everyone who has served time for possession of that substance going forward. Thank you.
Lives are being destroyed for a plant. Unbelievable.
I'm just told by Nicole, it's Dr. Hockman who's running for the State Board of Education position in this district. So let's remember that to the gentleman's question when we go to the polls.
Thank you. Right back here, and we have 3 more questions.
Hi, I'm Brandy. I've been an educator in Texas for 15 years. I've mostly worked with socioeconomically disadvantaged students, mostly minority students. And one of the things that I see the most that they're not getting in school is a true health education. So since we've been Republican-led, they've been teaching abstinence only. We're not allowed to say certain things in school, and my students truly don't know how to take care of themselves. They can't make informed decisions, and we're not allowed to tell them. So what are your ideas in solving that if you are elected?
Love this question, and I want to make sure that everybody thinks about just how serious this question is, because not only do we have a total abortion ban in the state of Texas right now, we have a total abortion ban in a state that leads the developed world in the rate of maternal mortality. That means we lose the lives of more women in Texas than we do almost anywhere else in this country, almost anywhere else in the developed world. For black women, it is 3 times as deadly to live in this state because, and follow me on this logic, as you shut down reproductive health care clinics, not only have you made it impossible to get an abortion, in many underserved communities, you've made it impossible to get a cervical cancer screening, to see a family planning provider, really to see a doctor of any kind. When you compound this with an abstinence-only education, without literally teaching us about our bodies and how they work and what the consequences of our actions are, we now lead the country in the rate of teen pregnancy. We now lead the country in the rate of repeat teen pregnancy. All of these things are connected. And so, I ask us to do what is best for our kids first and foremost. For their lives, for the lives of all of us, especially women, and I would argue especially women of color, given the rate at which we are losing them right now. So this connected to that question about the State Board of Education, about our local school boards, and about having the backs of our educators. How crazy is it? I mean, think about the people of the future reading the textbooks that I hope are written down the road about the people of 2022. And that we weren't allowed to learn about our bodies. We weren't allowed to learn about our history, or some people's history, right? We elevated some to pull down others right now. I'm so proud and impressed of anybody who continues to stay or is willing to go into public education at this moment. You're my hero because you're doing it against some of the toughest challenges. We need to make sure that we change these laws so you can actually do your job going forward, and we'll save more lives in the process. Thanks for asking this question. Let's turn it over.
2 more questions.
Here we go. I like that pep in your step, Ms. Conner.
Hi, Governor. How are you today?
Good to see you. I like the sound of that.
My name is Amanda. Sorry, I'm going to be like shaking. I'm like not a speaker. There's a question I've been wanting to ask you since you're friends with Raleigh. It's very important to me. I work in special education. I'm not a teacher, but I am an inclusion aide for 6th grade. What we are seeing in our district, which is smaller than this one, is that we are having more and more kids qualify for special education with insurmountable problems. Insurmountable. And we don't have enough people. We don't have enough money coming in to help us. We are understaffed, and we're just not providing everything we need for these kids. And it's gut-wrenching. You know, I can only do so much with my kids. What are you going to do to help us, to help all the school districts meet this need we have, this ever-growing need with children who need help and assistance that sometimes can only get in the school districts?
Yeah. What a great question. And look, this is why we do town halls like the one that we're having right now. If we were to only meet with donors or people who are politically powerful or special interests, we'd never get this question. You'd never get a response. There'd be no accountability. There would be no change. There's no real lobbyist for kids who need special education or who are medically complex or who have intellectual disabilities. So they're never at the forefront of the conversation. You just elevated them to that. You may have heard me say this before. My sister Erin was in special ed throughout her entire elementary, middle, and high school career in El Paso. And I gained a deep respect for those educators. Maybe there would be 20 kids in that class, maybe there'd be 30. I just met an educator in East Texas who's got 42 kids in a special education class. Each of them needs special, individualized care and attention. And I said that to her, and she's like, well, no shit, that's a but. What do you want me to do? Like, if I give up and walk out of that classroom, who's going to be there for them? So I can't be there for all 42. I just do my best. My friend Cynthia Cano, who just handed you the mic, when she started out as a public school teacher, she was a special education school teacher. So we talk about this. Her experience, my experience, experiences like yours in the classroom. You probably know this, but Texas tried to artificially cap the number of kids who needed. They're like, there will only be this number of kids in Texas who will require these services. We just calculated that, pulled it out of, who knows where, right? We also grossly underfund special education. And then here's the kicker in the negative sense, the reverse of the kicker I gave you earlier. When my sister Erin graduated from an El Paso high school, my mom found out there was an 18-year wait list for state-supported services. It's the longest wait list, I believe, in the country. We do less to fund those with special needs in our communities to ensure independence of living, to make sure they're living up to their full potential, fulfilling their promise, not institutionalized, able to live with their family or on their own, if we can get them there, than any other state. And just to remind everybody, I know you know this, we don't lack for resources or wealth. Our economy in Texas, $2 trillion large, 9th biggest economy on planet Earth, right here in Texas. It's just the political will and the willingness to focus on those who need it. In Colorado, they used to also have an 18-year wait list for state-supported services. When they legalized marijuana, they directed the proceeds from the taxable sales of that controlled substance in that state to state-supported services for those who are medically complex or who had disabilities, including intellectual disabilities. That wait list is now under a year in that state. We have the resources here. Let's get it done. Put them in those classrooms, reduce the ratio, support the teachers, make sure those kids get that care, but it's care for the rest of their life. We can never give up on them. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate it.
So we're under the doorway, and this will have to be our last question. The fire department's here. Good problem to have when we have too many people, so they're asking us to make this the last one.
Yes.
Yes, here we go.
Mr. Ward, we're about the same age. When we were attending school, we never worried about being safe. We didn't worry about being shot to death. But unfortunately and sadly, we're in a unique time. As the mother of a 7-year-old boy who's entering the 3rd grade, this year, when I hug and kiss him goodbye in the morning, I'm going to be worried all day if that was the last time that I've ever seen him. I live in Angleton, a few miles from here, a small town just like Uvalde. Mr. Ward, when you are elected governor, what are you going to do to prevent mass shootings in our public schools?
I'm so glad that you came here. I'm so glad that you asked this. In fact, I was going to make this the subject of the last thing that I said today, but I'll use this opportunity to answer your question to do that. It has been 10 weeks since those 19 kids were killed in that classroom, since those 2 teachers who have given their lives to those kids, their entire career, literally gave their lives to them on that day. This town, which will never fully recover. These families who will never, ever escape the loss that they feel. No matter how much time, no matter how much distance between that day and where they are in their lives. You sending your kids to school in the coming days, Amy and I having sent our kids to school this very Monday, and not a single thing has changed in this state to make it less likely that they'll experience the very same thing. And it's not as though the solutions are beyond our control. You know, sometimes, present company excluded, we treat these as natural disasters or something that was visited on us from above. The term evil is used very often, and I don't think that is a bad term or that it doesn't fit, but if you leave it at that, evil is biblical. Evil is between the devil and the Lord. Evil's out of my control. What can you do with evil? What can you do with crazy? What can you do with unpredictable? Well, this is a human-made problem, and it has a human-made solution to it. That young man in Uvalde patiently waited till he was 18 years old, because that's the law in Texas, to buy not one, but 2 AR-15s and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. For those who served in Vietnam, or whose folks served in Vietnam, you know that originally the AR-15 was designed, was engineered, was sold to our military to shoot an enemy soldier at 500 feet, be able to penetrate that helmet and take him down dead. You know from listening to the physicians who saw those kids in Uvalde that high impact, high velocity round shot at not 500 feet, but 5 feet, with no helmet on those kids' heads, literally liquefied what was inside them. That their parents, those doctors, identified their bodies by the shoes that they were wearing, okay, by the DNA in their system. Folks will say, you know, Beto, you may be about to propose a law, but criminals don't follow the law. Well, this kid followed the law. He didn't try to get that AR-15 when he was 15, 16, or 17. The law said you have to be 18. He followed the law, did nothing illegal. So what do we do against that? Well, here are some ideas I have heard from my fellow Texans. This kid was sending off signals in every direction before the shooting so bad that his friends called him the school shooter before he ever walked into that school and shot anybody. If we had a red flag law on the books, it would allow us to intervene when someone is threatening to shoot themselves or to shoot somebody else, and remove that firearm from the household with due process and return it to them once our concerns have been satisfied. We prioritize kids and members of our community over anybody's absolute right over anything. You have no right to take the lives of my children or your children or anybody here in this community. A universal background check would have averted the shooting that we saw in Midland, Odessa in 2019. This guy walks into a gun dealer, tries to buy an AR-15, doesn't pass the background check. Good, it works. But because we don't have a universal background check in Texas, he goes to a private seller, purchases it from him, no questions asked, turns around, uses that weapon of war to kill 8 people in that community. Our mutual friend Rhonda Hart in Galveston, Texas, where we just were, who lost her daughter Kimberly in the 2018 Santa Fe High School shooting, has proposed a safe storage law because the gunman or the gun child in that shooting, 17 years old, was able to get his hands on his unsecured gun, or his parents' unsecured gun in their household. Her proposal, and she is an Army veteran, a gun owner, she was a school bus driver in the very district that her daughter was killed in. Just make sure that if you have those firearms and you have kids, that you keep them locked up. That's it. Your rights are protected. We just want to make sure that our lives are protected as well. And so if you're looking at what I'm proposing, raising the minimum age of purchase for an AR at least to 21, right? We would have bought 3 more years with this kid in Uvalde, maybe intervened in that time, maybe he would have made different decisions. Universal background check, safe storage, red flag. These are things that will save the lives of our fellow Texans. And I've listened to gun owners, I've listened to non-gun owners, I've listened to Republicans, I've listened to Democrats. There are many things that we will argue about and disagree on, but on this much we find common ground. Last thing that I want to say, and it's related to the woman's question. Not only are we thinking about, as we should, those families in Uvalde 10 weeks after their kids were taken from them, after those 2 teachers were taken from them. But today marks the 3rd anniversary of the shooting in El Paso. It was August 3rd, 2019, that a guy in North Texas, in the city of Allen, who'd been hearing about his president at the time, Donald Trump, say, we have an invasion, an infestation, animals coming across this border. You know, an infestation is what I think of when I think about cockroaches or rats or things that I want to kill and exterminate. In that year, in 2019, Trump was holding a rally in Florida, and he said, what are we going to do about this invasion? Someone at the rally yells out, shoot them. Everybody in the crowd laughs. The president smiles. He continues with his speech. I mentioned our governor on the eve of that El Paso shooting was talking about defending ourselves and taking matters into our own hands. Well, this young man in Allen, Texas, orders an AK-47, another weapon of war. The weapon comes in. You know what happens next? His mom calls the cops. I have no idea what my son needs with this weapon. Something's not right here. Can you help me out? Well, we don't have a red flag law on the books at that time. We still don't today. The cops say, I'm sorry, ma'am, good luck, you're on your own. He drives that weapon 650 miles to El Paso, Texas. Minutes before he walks into that Walmart, he posts a manifesto online, and he echoes the same words that were used by President Trump and Greg Abbott. He's come to repel an invasion of Hispanics who are coming to politically take over this state. When he's arrested afterwards by the cops, he tells them, I came here to kill Mexicans. He walked into that Walmart with that AK-47, and he shot and killed 23 people. He shot a 15-year-old boy who was about to start his sophomore year in high school in El Paso. He shot grandparents who were there with their grandkids. He shot people from every walk of life in one of the most peaceful cities in the United States of America. We have more than 1 million people in the El Paso metro area. It is a big surprise if we have 20 murders a year in that community. In minutes, with that weapon that was originally intended for war, he was able to take 23 lives based on the fiction and the fraud that immigrants are a threat to us, that they're dangerous. I'll tell you, El Paso is one of the safest cities in America, not in spite of those immigrants who live in our community, but because of those immigrants who live in our community and make it a better place. So, for the parents in the valley, for the survivors in El Paso, for any one of you whose lives have been touched and changed by gun violence, obviously, you are in our thoughts and in our prayers, and I don't diminish that. And some people write that stuff off. Prayer is powerful, at least for me and in my life. And I'm thinking about and praying for those people that I've been talking to in El Paso over these last 3 years today. But more than anything, what they've asked from us and what they've asked from me directly is action. They want to make sure that no one else ever has to endure the suffering, the grief, and the loss that they've experienced. The power to do that is literally in our hands and in our votes and in our shoes if we're willing to knock on doors and bring more voters into this election. The only way we change this dynamic is by winning political power on the night of November 8th. So, if you care about those whose lives have been lost, if you want to prevent, as this woman does, as I do, the further loss of life, especially of our kids, then I'm calling on you to take action right now. It is the antidote to any kind of despair that you may be tempted to feel, and it is the key to victory and overcoming this challenge. Thank you for being here. I want to thank you all here in Lake Jackson and Brazoria County for having us out. I am so grateful to you and Cynthia.
Just a quick announcement. They're going to open this door back here, so if you'd like to exit that way, you can. We want to thank the staff at Guadalajara who did a phenomenal job. And last, if you'd like to stay and say hi, take a quick picture. And I know it's really crowded, but we are going to go through those doors. There's a flag to the left, and we'd love for everybody, please just take your time, walk out. There's going to be a line, and we'll take pictures with everyone.
Let's do this. You all ready to win on November 8th?